Reading test. Directions. Following each of the passages or pairs of passages below are questions about the passage or passages. Read each passage carefully, then select the best answer for each question based on what is stated in the passage or passages and in any graphics that may accompany the passage. Questions 1 through 11 are based on the following passage. An incident at Owl Creek Bridge. A short story was written in the United States that was set in Civil War times. This passage is an adaptation of an excerpt from that story. It is about a man on the southern side of that war named Peyton Farquhar. The first paragraphs are a description of a scene on a bridge where Farquhar is about to be hanged. He was about to be executed for a crime he was guilty of. He tried to burn down a bridge. Farquhar was on the side of the south, and a scout from the north side had fooled him. The scout rode to Farquhar's house looking like a South supporter. He told Farquhar about some driftwood near a bridge that would bring the bridge down if it was set on fire. If someone ruined the bridge, the North would be unable to advance their soldiers. The scout brought out South supporters so they could be caught and executed. Peyton Farquhar was a planter, a slave owner, and a man who believed in the cause of the South. They wanted to break away and be separate from the northern states. Number 1. As used in line 13, civil most nearly means C. Non-military. For number 1, substitute the answer choices in the original sentence. The sergeant is a person who might have been a deputy sheriff before he joined the Army, that is, in his civil or non-military life. 2. In cinematic terms, the first two paragraphs most nearly resemble A wide-angle shot followed by a close-up. For 2, paragraph 1 presents a general picture of the man on the bridge, the executioners, and the officer standing nearby, the sentinels at the far ends of the bridge too. Cinematically, it is like a wide-angle shot of the whole panorama. Paragraph 2 takes a closer look at the man. Number 3. It can most reasonably be inferred from the passage that the man awaiting hanging was B, an unlikely candidate for execution. 3 is B. Use the process of elimination here. Was the man awaiting hanging innocent of any criminal intent? No, he was willing to perform the act. Choice A is incorrect. Was the man awaiting hanging an unlikely candidate for execution? Possibly. Keep choice B in mind as you consider the other choices. Was the man awaiting hanging a victim of mistaken identity? No, he was caught in the act. Was the man awaiting hanging purposely assuming a harmless demeanor? Nothing in the passage suggests that he was putting on the appearance of being harmless. Choice C is incorrect. Only choice B is left. 4. Which choice provides the best evidence for the answer to the previous question? 4 is C, lines 33 through 38, starting with he wore and ending with the word hemp. To have one's neck in the hemp is to have one's neck in a noose, a rope made out of hemp. Number 5, the author's tone in discussing the liberal military code, line 39, can best be described as B, ironic. In calling the military code liberal, because it doesn't exclude members of the upper classes from being executed, the author is being highly ironic. Generally, people would like regulations to be interpreted liberally to permit them to do the things they want. Here, the liberal military code is permitting the man to be hanged. Clearly, the gentleman facing execution would have preferred the code to be less liberal in this case. 6. It can most reasonably be inferred from the passage that Peyton Farquhar would consider which of the following a good example of how a citizen should behave in wartime. A. He should use even underhanded methods to support his cause. Farquhar agrees readily with the saying that all is fair in love and war. This implies he is willing to use underhanded or unfair methods to support the Southern cause. 7. As used in line 59, consistent most nearly means be compatible. Look at the content in which the word consistent occurs. No adventure was too perilous for him to undertake if it was consistent with the character of a civilian who was at heart a soldier. Anything he does must be consistent or compatible with his image of himself. 8. It can most reasonably be inferred from the passage that Mrs. Farquhar is sympathetic to the Confederate cause. The fact that Mrs. Farquhar is married to a man ardently devoted to the Southern cause, together with her readiness to fetch water for a Confederate soldier, suggests some degree of sympathy on her part for the Confederate cause. Number 9. Which choice provides the best evidence for the answer to the previous question? Number 9 is B, lines 68 through 70, beginning with Mrs. Farquhar and ending with hands. For 9, the assertion that Mrs. Farquhar was only too happy to fetch water for a soldier wearing the gray uniform of the Confederate Army provides strong evidence that she is sympathetic to the Confederate cause. 10. From Farquhar's exchange with the soldier, lines 84 through 102, it can most reasonably be inferred that Farquhar is going to B, attempt to burn down the bridge to halt the Yankee advance. Farquhar wishes to prevent the advance, and to do so, he must somehow damage the railroad, its bridges, its tunnels, or its trains. Clearly, it would make sense for him to try to set fire to the driftwood in an attempt to burn down the bridge. 11. The main purpose of the concluding sentence of the passage is to C, establish that Farquhar has been entrapped into taking an unwise action. For 11, it's C because the scout is a Yankee soldier disguised as a member of the enemy. By coming to the Farquhar's plantation in Confederate disguise, he tricked or trapped Farquhar. The scout's job is to locate potential enemies and draw them out from cover. The concluding sentence thus establishes that Farquhar has been entrapped into taking an unwise action, an action that will lead to his execution at Owl Creek Bridge. Questions 12 through 21 are based on the following passage. Franklin D. Roosevelt's third inaugural address. United States President F.D. Roosevelt made an address to the nation on January 20th, 1941. This passage is taken from his address, which happened nearly a year before the bombing of Pearl Harbor caused America's entry into the Second World War. He discussed the American spirit as a product of the centuries, and he wanted to inspire people to push more for democracy. As he discusses democratic aspiration, he mentions how strong the country is. The United States of America has democracy written into the country's founding documents. He says that true democracy is an ideal that we move constantly toward. FDR says that there is still a ways to go. Other countries and their leaders don't always share America's ideals. In his address, he uses strong words and imagery to make his points clear. He wanted everyone in the country to keep democracy strong nationally and to promote its growth internationally. 12. As used in line 14, plain most nearly means B, ordinary. President Roosevelt mentions two types of people who came to America seeking freedom, some of high degree, but mostly plain people. The people of high degree were members of the upper classes, those set apart by aristocratic birth or social position. The others were plain, ordinary people. 13. The author indicates which of the following about the American belief in freedom. D. It has deep-seated historical roots. Roosevelt describes the American spirit as the product of centuries. In other words, the hope of freedom and the love of liberty go back for centuries. America's democratic ideal has deep-seated, firmly established historical roots. Number 14. Which choice provides the best evidence for the answer to the previous question, which was number 13? For 14, it's B, lines 17 through 21, starting with the Democratic and ending with Carta. Choice B clearly supports the contention that the American belief in freedom has deep-seated historical roots. It pointedly asserts that the democratic aspiration is no mere recent phase in human history, and goes on to mention the Magna Carta or Great Charter of 1215 as an example. Number 15. The author uses the Mayflower Compact, Declaration of Independence, Constitution, and Gettysburg Address as examples of B, expressions of the democratic aspiration. For 15, look at the context in which these documents are mentioned. To what does the phrase, "its vitality," refer? The answer appears 2 paragraphs earlier. In the opening sentence, the democratic aspiration is no mere recent phase in human history. The democratic aspiration is Roosevelt's theme, the subject he is discussing. According to him, the vitality and strength of democratic aspiration were written into America's founding documents. Thus, he clearly is citing these documents as examples of expressions of the democratic aspiration. Number 16. The author recognizes counter-arguments to the position he takes in lines 33 through 39, starting with those who first and ending with generation, by A, acknowledging that economic injustices must be addressed before democracy can prevail. For 16, in lines 36 through 39, Roosevelt asserts that Americans have moved forward constantly and consistently toward an ideal, which in itself has gained stature and clarity with each generation. It is his optimistic contention that we have been coming closer and closer to reaching that ideal, and that the democratic spirit has grown stronger. However, he acknowledges that we still have far to go before we reach that ideal. The existence of both undeserved poverty and self-serving wealth stands in the way of democracy. In other words, economic injustices must be addressed before democracy can prevail. 17. As used in line 76, directed most nearly means A, addressed. In his 1789 first inaugural address, Washington was directing his words to his contemporaries. In other words, he was addressing his words to them, speaking to them in a formal way. To Roosevelt, Washington's words sounded prophetic, as if he had addressed his words to the people of 1941. 18. What main effect does the repetition of the phrase "it speaks to us" in lines 62 through 70 have on the tone of the passage? C. It creates a dramatic tone, emphasizing the point being made and adding to its emotional impact. For 18, it's C because repetition is a common yet effective literary device that strengthens the power of the point being made. One website of popular literary terms describes the effect of repetition as follows. The aura that is created by the usage of repetition cannot be achieved through any other device. It has the ability of making a simple sentence sound like a dramatic one. It enhances the beauty of a sentence and stresses on the point of main significance. Thus, the main effect of the repetition of the phrase, "It speaks to us," is to create a dramatic tone, emphasizing the point being made and adding to its emotional impact. Number 19. Number 20. Which choice provides the best evidence for the answer to the previous question? Number 20 is D, lines 92 through 94, starting with "in the face" and finishing with the word "democracy." For 20, Washington's experiment entrusted to the hands of the American people is the Republican model of government, whose preservation he urges. It is this same model of government that Roosevelt urges Americans to defend when he asserts that our strong purpose is to protect and to perpetuate the integrity of democracy. 21. It is reasonable to conclude that a major goal of Roosevelt in making this speech was to inspire the American people to defend the cause of freedom in dangerous times. See the introduction for number 21. Roosevelt delivered his third inaugural address in January of 1941, at a time when Britain and its allies were hard-pressed by Hitler's forces, but the United States had not yet gone to war. Nonetheless, it was clear that democracy was under attack and that America was facing great perils never before encountered. The passage's final paragraphs emphasize the need to preserve the sacred fire of liberty. The President exhorts his listeners to protect and to perpetuate the integrity of democracy. Thus, it is reasonable to conclude that a major goal of Roosevelt in making this speech was to inspire the American people to defend the cause of freedom in dangerous times. Questions 22 through 31 are based on the following passage. Mortal Lessons, Notes on the Art of Surgery. A contemporary American surgeon wrote a book named Mortal Lessons, Notes on the Art of Surgery, and this passage is taken from that book. The writer traces the course of a surgical procedure. He gives a very vivid description and does not really define terms or provide an example of a particular method of surgery. This is not a lesson. The author uses the strongest words and imagery possible. He describes the cutting of the soft skin with a scalpel and the red of the blood. He will use a phrase like "parts the skin" so that he can show how the word "parts" is used here that is different from other uses. The writer describes the inside of the human body, and he also feels that his occupation is close to a priestly job or calling. The author does not define terms since he believes that the reader is already familiar with the organs and tissues of the human body. He does describe how to hold a scalpel, so he thinks the reader doesn't know how to do that very well. Number 22. The passage is best described as D, a description of a process. Step by step, the author traces the course of a surgical procedure. In doing so, he is describing a process. Choice A is incorrect. Although in the course of the passage, the author occasionally defines a term, the passage taken as a whole describes the process. It does not define a term. Choice B is incorrect. The passage does not provide an example of a particular method of surgery. Instead, it describes the process. Choice C is incorrect. This is not a lesson instructing novice surgeons in the steps they should take. to perform a successful surgery, it is a vivid description of the process of surgery. 23. It can most reasonably be inferred from the passage that the wake of red, to which the author refers, line 7, is C, a line of blood. As the surgeon draws the knife across the skin, it leaves a thin line of blood in its wake or path. Choices A and B are incorrect. Nothing in the opening paragraph supports either choice. Choice D is incorrect. The darting knife is followed by the fine wake of red. The knife blade is not the wake of red. Number 24. Which choice provides the best evidence for the answer to the previous question, which was 23? For 24, it's C, lines 7 and 8, starting with the flesh and ending with the word fat. The darting knife is followed by a wake of red. If the meaning of the simile is still unclear at this point, the next sentence, in which the parted flesh reveals yellow blobs of fat below, is a clue that the fine wake of red is a bloody incision made by the knife. Choices A and B are incorrect. They describe the way to hold the knife, not the effect of the knife as it cuts its way through the skin. Choice D is incorrect. It has nothing to do with the knife's wake or trail of red. 25. As used in line 8, parts most nearly means B, splits. For 25, it's a little hard. To part the flesh is to split apart or separate the skin, cutting it apart with the knife. Choice A is incorrect. Although in some contexts, parts means leaves, as in parting from someone at the train station, that is not how it's used here. Choice C is incorrect. Although in some contexts, parts means surrenders, like parting with hard-earned cash, that is not how it is used here. Choice D is incorrect. Although in some contexts, parts means distributes, parting an estate into shares, that is not how it's used here. 26. As used in line 42, engage most nearly means be engrossed. The simile, like children absorbed in a game, indicates that in this context, engaged means engrossed or deeply involved. Choice A is wrong, although in some contexts, engaged means betrothed or pledged to marry. That is not how it's used here. Choice C is incorrect. Although in some contexts, engaged means hired, engaged as a contractor, that's not how it's used here. Also, choice D is wrong, although in some contexts, engaged means embattled, like engaged forces, that is not how it's used here. 27. In lines 49 through 50, the comment, one expects to find drawings of buffalo on the walls, metaphorically compares the abdominal cavity to D, a prehistoric cave. For 27, it's D because primitive drawings of buffalo and other wild beasts still exist in caves in which prehistoric humans dwell. Thus, one might expect to find them in a cavity described as a primitive place. Choice A is incorrect. In a primitive place, one might expect to find primitive drawings. One wouldn't necessarily expect to find them in an art gallery. Choices B and C are incorrect. Nothing in the passage suggests that one might expect to find drawings of buffalo in either a zoological display or a Western film. 28. The author most likely describes the colors of the internal organs as secret, line 52, because B, they normally are hidden from sight. The colors of the internal organs are secret because until the peritoneum is opened and the world's light illuminates the abdominal cavity, the internal organs cannot be seen. In other words, the colors of the organs normally are hidden from sight. 29. In creating an impression of the surgery for the reader, the author primarily makes use of C, references to religious imagery. For 29, it's C because the author looks on his work as a surgeon as if it were a priestly vocation or job. The first hint of this comes in lines 32 through 34. The litany of monosyllables, with which one prays his way down and in. Clamp, sponge, suture, tie, cut. The one-word requests that the surgeon makes for a clamp or a sponge are like a litany, a form of prayer. The surgeon prays his way down and in. Clearly, the writer is making use of religious imagery. Choice A is incorrect. Although the author likens the cavity to a cavern, he primarily describes the surgery in religious terms. Choice B is incorrect. The author never contrasts this surgery with other types of surgery. Choice D is incorrect. The author never evokes or suggests the patient's emotions. If anything, he evokes the surgeon's emotions. Number 30. Which choice provides the best evidence for the answer to the previous question, which is 29? For 30, it's D, lines 62 through 64, starting with "it is a" and finishing with "washed." In these two sentences, the author makes explicit his sense of surgery as a religious rite, an impression he continues to develop in the next paragraph. Number 31. One aspect of the passage that may make it difficult to appreciate is the author's apparent assumption throughout that readers will, C, be familiar with the organs and tissues that are named. For 31, it's C because you need to consider the various descriptive passages in which the author explores the formerly hidden organs and tissues now exposed to view. The author names them and evokes their appearance in a brief descriptive phrase. However, he does not bother to define anatomical terms. Instead, he apparently assumes that his readers will be familiar with the organs and tissues to which he refers. Choice A is wrong. The author freely goes into vivid detail about surgical procedures. He would be unlikely to be as free in his imagery if he assumed that the readers had qualms about reading descriptions of surgery. Choice B is wrong. The author carefully describes how to hold a scalpel. He would not do so if he assumed his readers were already adept at handling surgical tools. Choice D is incorrect. Nothing in the passage suggests that the author assumes his readers have undergone surgery. Questions 32 through 42 are based on the following passages. A historical study of the relationship between the press and United States presidents. A study was done of this relationship for each U.S. president from George Washington to Ronald Reagan. Passage 1 is taken from that study, and the writer constantly shows the reader the lengthy time period this will cover. This is an overview of an inherently conflicted relationship. He says that this relationship will always undergo new challenges and changes as technology and our institutions continue to change. The writer notes that politicians hate to be criticized in public. Often the relationship between a president and the press starts out a little bit friendly but ends in animosity and antagonism. They end up as enemies. He wants readers to be careful to not view the past in terms of current times. Passage 2 looks more closely at the changes in this relationship over the years. This passage suggests that the increasingly adversarial nature of the relationship might have brought about a shift from solo press conferences to joint ones. Number 32. The main purpose of Passage 1 is to C. Present an overview of an inherently conflicted relationship that faces new challenges. Throughout Passage 1, the author constantly emphasizes the lengthy time period his book will cover. In the passage's opening sentence, he refers to the shifting relationship between the press and the presidency over nearly 2 centuries. Later, he refers to the relationship of the presidents to the press since George Washington's first term. The author is surveying nearly 2 centuries of this relationship. In other words, he is presenting an overview of a relationship. The inherently conflicted relationship clearly faces new challenges and will continue to do so as our institutions and technology continue to change. 33. According to the opening paragraph of Passage 1, all American presidents have experienced D. Mutual animosity involving themselves and the press. The first paragraph of the passage says that the administration of every president has ended with recriminations and mistrust. Presidents, like everyone else, hate to be criticized in public. Therefore, they all have experienced animosity involving themselves and the press. Choice C is wrong. The first paragraph states that while the initial stage of the relationship between the press and the president may seem harmonious, the relationship ends in antagonism. The paragraph never suggests that periods of antagonism and harmony alternate. 34. Which choice provides the best evidence for the answer to the previous question? It's A. Lines 7 through 10, starting with the record and ending with mistrust. For 34, if the record of every administration has begun with the press and the presidency claiming to feel goodwill toward one another and has ended with them blaming and mistrusting one another, then clearly all American presidents have experienced mutual animosity or ill will involving themselves and the press. Number 35. As used in line 27, reduced most nearly means be boiled down. To be reduced to simple terms is to be simplified or boiled down to its essential basic nature. Choices A, C, and D are wrong. Although reduced can mean decreased, like reduced speed, marked down, reduced prices, or demoted, reduced in rank, it is not how the word is used here. 36. The authors of Passage 1 caution the reader about judging the actions of long-dead presidents, because C, readers today cannot fully grasp the significance these actions had in their own time. The author advises the reader to, in lines 41 and 42, be careful not to view the past in terms of our own times. This advice is an axiom, a statement or proposition regarded as being established, accepted, or self-evidently true of professional historians. As a professional historian, he gives the reader this advice because readers today cannot fully grasp the significance these actions had in their own time. Number 37. Which choice provides the best evidence for the answer to 36? It's D, lines 43 through 54, starting with certain parallels and ending with years. To use present standards to judge the actions of past presidents is to violate historical context. Because the words press, government, and presidency have changed in meaning, because our lives today differ so greatly from the lives of people in earlier times, we cannot fully understand the significance of presidential actions 2 centuries ago. 38. In the opening sentence of the final paragraph, lines 55 through 59 of Passage 1, the authors seek primarily to C. Correct a misconception. The opening sentence of the final paragraph concludes with the clause, but the facts are quite different. Many Americans believe that the colonists immediately established a free society. The author says that this belief is wrong. Thus, he is trying to correct a misconception or mistaken idea. 39, as used in line 107, open most nearly means B, unrestricted. The open questioning to which the author refers, line 107, is the unrestricted, no-holds-barred questioning that the President faces in modern solo press conferences. Choices A, C, and D are incorrect, although open can mean receptive, open to suggestions, unconcealed, open carry, or vulnerable, open to abuse. That is not how it is used here. 40. Data in the graph about presidential solo and joint press conferences from 1981 through 2004 most strongly support which of the following statements? B. Presidents Clinton and George W. Bush held a far higher percentage of joint press conferences than either of their predecessors did. Use the process of elimination to answer this question. Did President Clinton hold more solo press conferences than President George H.W. Bush did? No. Choice A is incorrect. Did Presidents Clinton and George W. Bush hold a far higher percentage of joint press conferences than either of their predecessors did? This seems to be correct. President Clinton's percentage of joint press conferences was 67.9%. President George W. Bush's percentage of joint press conferences was 77.3%. Neither of their predecessors came even close. Choice B is most likely the right answer. Now, choice C asks you to draw a conclusion that is unsupported by the data in the graph. The graph provides data showing President Reagan held no joint press conferences. However, it provides no information to indicate why he did this. Choice C is wrong. Choice D is also incorrect. Unlike his son, President George H.W. Bush held fewer joint press conferences than solo sessions. 41. Which choice best describes the relationship between the two passages? It's A. Passage 2 denies the static nature of the phenomenon described in Passage 1. For number 41, Passage 1 describes a phenomenon. This phenomenon is the dissatisfaction of the press and the President with each other. Passage 1 describes it as a constant, that is, an unchanging factor. Passage 2, however, focuses on changes in this relationship. It does not describe the situation as static. Instead, it emphasizes the increasingly contentious, adversarial nature of the relationship and suggests that this increased aggressiveness from the press may have brought about the shift from solo press conferences, during which the President is more open to direct hostility, to joint press conferences in which he has more control of the situation. Thus, in focusing on the increases in press aggressiveness and on the changes in the structure of presidential press conferences, Passage 2 denies the static nature of the phenomenon described in Passage 1. Number 42. On which of the following points would the authors of both passages most likely agree? It's C. The relationship between the press and the presidency is inherently adversarial and likely to remain so. Both authors make a point of the adversarial nature of the relationship between the press and the president. This inherent antagonism is at the heart of the relationship and is likely to influence the actions of both the press and the president for years to come. Questions 43 through 52 are based on the following passage. The facts behind the frack. Rachel Ehrenberg wrote an article for Science News magazine, and this passage is abridged from that article. It was about the controversies around the hydraulic fracturing method of recovering natural gas from beneath the surface of the earth. The author early on makes a play on words by using the word fractious to describe the debate over the subject. Fractious sounds similar to fracking. She writes that supporters assert that fracking is going to be radically altering gas production. This removal process does have negative repercussions. Supporters say that the benefits are large enough to outweigh the drawbacks. This process also will need increased regulations. She writes that the fears of the public about this can be fueled by media reports. Several U.S. states have attempted legislation to ban fracking. She is not advocating opinions one way or the other, she is merely reporting opinions. The author is trying to be an objective observer and to present a balanced account of the fracking process and situation. "43. In line 1, the author chooses the word fractious, contentious, heated, to create B, a play on words. To describe the debate over fracking or hydraulic fracturing as fractious is to make a play on the words fractious and fracturing. The author chooses that adjective because it sounds similar. The similarity strengthens the effect of the sentence. Choice A is wrong. A metaphor is a figure of speech in which a term or phrase is applied to something to which it is not literally applicable in order to suggest a resemblance, as in, my boss is such a bear today. Choice C is wrong. It is no exaggeration to say that the debate over fracking has become heated or fractious. Hydraulic fracturing is a controversial subject, and the discussion about it is contentious. D is wrong. A counter-argument is an argument put forward to oppose an idea or theory developed in another argument. It has nothing to do with the author's word choice here. 44. To call fracking-related gas recovery a game changer, line 7, is to assert that fracking, B, will radically alter natural gas production. Choice B is right. A game changer is an event, an idea, or procedure that brings about a significant shift in the current way of doing something. By calling fracking-related gas recovery a game changer, its supporters are asserting that it is going to radically alter natural gas production. A is wrong. Its proponents do not assert that fracking has no foreseeable negative consequences. Instead, they assert that its positive benefits strongly outweigh its possible drawbacks. C is wrong. In calling fracking a game changer, the proponents are not asserting that they fail to take it seriously. Choice D is incorrect. Although later portions of the passage mention a need for regulation, fracking's proponents say nothing about any need for active federal regulation. 45. Which choice provides the best evidence for the answer to the previous question? It's A, lines 9 through 14, starting with the gas and ending with the word energy. For 45, choice A is right. In lines 6 through 14, the author lists points made by fracking supporters. To have access through fracking to a large supply of inexpensive, relatively clean natural gas would change our methods of production radically. It would change the entire oil industry. Indeed, it is doing so now. None of the remaining choices provide evidence in support of the assertion that fracking is a game changer. Number 46. What function does the discussion of fracking legislation in lines 32 through 38 serve in the passage? A. It describes specific responses to concerns raised in the previous paragraph. In lines 15 through 24, the author relates the public's fears about the dangers of fracking. Media reports fuel these fears. In the paragraph right after it, the author depicts the reaction these fears have produced in the political arena. She mentions protests and legislative attempts to halt or ban fracking in several states. Her discussion of fracking legislation thus describes specific responses to concerns raised in the previous paragraph. Number 47. In line 58, open most nearly means A, unresolved. A is right. An open question is a matter that has not yet been decided, an issue that remains unresolved. B's wrong. Open can mean vulnerable, but not here. Choice C is wrong. Open can mean accessible, as in a school program being open to all students, but that's not the sense in which it's used here. Choice D is incorrect. Although open can mean ajar, like a door being left open, that is not the sense in which it is used here. 48. The stance that the author takes throughout the passage is best described as that of D, an observer striving to present a balanced account. Use the process of elimination to answer this question. A is wrong. Nothing in the passage suggests that its author advocates or supports technological innovations such as fracking. She merely reports the opinions of its advocates. B is wrong. Nothing in the passage suggests that its author either opposes or supports regulatory oversight. She just describes legislative attempts to regulate fracking. C is incorrect. Nothing here suggests that the writer is a concerned legislator. She merely recounts the actions taken by legislators regarding the topic. Only D is left. It is right. The author is an observer, striving to be objective and to present a balanced account. Number 49. Which choice provides the best evidence for the answer to the previous question? It's C. Lines 51 through 59, starting with the word while and ending with the word question. The author acknowledges that the dangers of fracking are real, and also she says that the potential energy payoff is real as well. She is striving to present both sides of the argument objectively. 50. The graph, based on Ellsworth's figures, accentuates the C increasing frequency of earthquakes in the region. Now, the solid line on the graph vividly depicts a sudden marked jump in the number and frequency of earthquakes from about 2009. This accentuates or emphasizes the increasing frequency of earthquakes in the region. B is wrong. The graph plots the increased frequency, not their increased magnitude. A and D also are wrong. Nothing in the passage would support either answer. 51. In line number 87, pronounced most nearly means A, noticeable. For 51, in stating that the change in the frequency and number of earthquakes was pronounced, Ellsworth is asserting that it was marked or particularly noticeable. Choices B, C, and D are incorrect. Although pronounced can mean declared, like pronounced dead, decided on, like pronounced on innocent or guilt, or articulated, like correctly pronounced words, that is not how it is used here. Number 52. It can most reasonably be inferred from the concluding paragraph that Ellsworth looks on current hypotheses about connections between the recent increases in earthquakes and the start of the fracking boom as C, evidence of seismic activity. For 52, Ellsworth indicates that researchers lack pre-quake data, that's lines 98 through 100. He advises researchers to collect seismic information about current and potential drilling sites, and he concludes the paragraph by stating explicitly that there are many things we don't understand. All these comments suggest that Ellsworth looks on current hypotheses about connections between the recent increases in earthquakes and the start of the fracking boom as based on insufficient evidence. Geologists simply don't know enough about what actually occurs during fracking to be able to properly test their hypotheses about fracking's possible effects on the increasing frequency of earthquakes. Writing and language test. Directions. Questions follow each of the passages below. Some questions ask you how the passage might be changed to improve the expression of ideas. Other questions ask you how the passage might be altered to correct errors in grammar, usage, and punctuation. One or more graphics accompany some passages. You'll be required to consider these graphics as you answer the questions about editing the passage. There are 3 types of questions. In the first type, a part of the passage is underlined. The second type is based on a certain part of the passage, and the third type is based on the entire passage. Read each passage, then choose the answer to each question that changes the passage so that it is consistent with the convention of standard written English. One of the answer choices for many questions is no change. Choosing this answer means that you believe the best answer is to make no change in the passage. Questions 1 through 11 are based on the following passage. Here's question 1. Which wording is most consistent with the paragraph as a whole? It's C, rebuff. The first sentence of the paragraph states that modernism is characterized by the complete rejection of traditions and values. That's consistent with a rebuff of conventional morality. Moreover, the rest of the paragraph mentions moral relativism, which further solidifies the notion of a rebuff of mainstream values. A is not right because it is the opposite of an embrace. B is not right because it can be reasonably inferred that Fitzgerald must have understood conventional morality since he skillfully wrote about matters concerning it. D is incorrect because its connotation is too positive. For 2, it's no change. The writer uses an interesting turn of phrase to state that Bernice does not listen to, entertain, or find amusing, be entertained by, Marjorie's social activities. Choice B does not work because a transitional word would be needed after entertainment. And choices C and D result in meanings that don't make any sense. For number 3, the answer is D, herself. The underlined portion refers to the female Bernice, so herself is appropriate. The other options are not consistent with a third person singular female. Here's question number 4. The answer is C, to mock. To mock is parallel with the earlier to embody in the sentence and concisely expresses the intended idea. Choices A and B are too wordy. Choice D is not parallel to the earlier phrasing. For number 5, it's B. The answer is who. Who is correct since it stands for a subject that is human. Choice A is used in reference to objects. Choice C shows possession, and choice D means who is. 6. Where in this paragraph should the underlined sentence be placed? For 6, the answer is D, before the third sentence. Now this sentence needs to come before the third sentence, which starts with, despite her good looks. This sentence provides a transition between a description of Marjorie and a contrasting description of Bernice. The other placements are illogical, as they would not allow for a clear transition between the descriptions of the two characters. Number 8, the answer is B, while. It is the only option that provides a contrast within the sentence between how Marjorie is preferred socially and her rudeness. For number 9, the answer is A, no change. When adjectives have to be ordered a certain way to provide a logical meaning, there should be no commas separating them. In this case, it only makes sense to say few short sentences, not short few sentences. That makes A the only viable option. Choices B and D change the meaning, and choice C has an unnecessary comma in it. Here's 10. Which choice would be logically placed here to represent the characterizations of Marjorie and Bernice in the paragraph? 10. The answer is C, false facades. The last sentence of the paragraph makes this choice the most clear, stating that both Bernice and Marjorie are quite superficial, so characterizing them as having false facades is most logical. With their vengeful dramatics, they are far from being kind-hearted, as in choice A, and B is wrong since they are not revolutionary ideologues, but instead more decadent. Choice D is not the right answer because being frivolous and pious are contradictory to each other. Questions 12 through 22 are based on the following passage and supplementary material. Here's 12. Which choice most specifically elaborates on the first part of this sentence? C. Which have recently expanded to incorporate smartphones, tablets, and blogs. The first part of the sentence states that journalism gathers and distributes news in a variety of ways, and choice C gives specific examples of the technology that does this. Choices A, B, and D are irrelevant to the first part of the sentence. For 13, the answer is C. News media, the field itself is optimistic, not only. This choice places a comma after the introductory dependent clause, ending in media, and then puts a colon before a clarification of how the field is optimistic. A lacks a necessary comma after media, and that leads to a run-on sentence. B leads to a run-on, and choice C puts a semicolon between a subject and a verb, which should not be separated. 14 is A, no change, but also follows not only when making a statement like not only this, but also that. None of the other options works with this idiomatic phrasing. 15. Which choice best concludes this paragraph and transitions to the topic of the next paragraph? It's B. Journalism isn't dying. The way reporters do their job is changing. The current paragraph emphasizes that journalism has undergone major changes, while the following paragraph delves more deeply into concrete explanations of these changes. So choice B makes the most sense because it provides both a conclusion to the current paragraph and a transition into the topic of the next. Choices A and C contradict the information presented in the next paragraph, and D speaks more to the quality of journalism than to its overall popularity. (16) is A, no change. The sentence is stating two things that do not happen, so saying doesn't in conjunction with nor makes sense. Choice B shows cause and effect. C shows a direct connection between two ideas, and choice D shows contrast. 17 is D. Departments are ensuring that they're. Now for 17, this choice correctly does not have an apostrophe after departments, because this word is functioning as the subject, not as a possessive adjective. Choices A and B incorrectly have apostrophes after departments. D is also correct because ensuring means to make sure, which fits the context. Assure means to reassure, and insure has to do with financial transactions. Number 18. Which choice best connects this sentence to the previous sentence? A. No change. The previous sentence refers to leading journalism departments, so a sentence about the #1 journalism department in the country is a logical connection. The other choices may very well give interesting and factual information about this school, but they are not directly connected to the previous sentence. 19 is D. University, also having a journalism department, ranked in the top 10 nationwide, offers. On 19, this choice correctly places commas around the parenthetical phrase. Choice A has a comma at an awkward point, choice B lacks the necessary pauses, and choice C is too choppy. Here's number 20. The answer is B, endless effects. The adjective endless is needed to modify the noun effects. Also, affect is generally a verb and effect is generally a noun. The incorrect options either use the adverb endlessly and/or use the verb affect. 21. Which choice offers the most accurate interpretation of the data in the chart? It's D, about the job market fluctuations in recent years. According to the graph, the number of journalism-related job openings has gone up, then down, then up again in recent years. This is best described as a fluctuation. A is wrong because since the passage was written in 2015, there has not been a steady increase in demand for journalism in recent years, given the big drop from 2006 to 2009. Choice B is not right because in recent years, the number of jobs available increased. And C is wrong because the level of employment has gone up and down, not remained steady. 22. The answer is A, no change. To adapt is to make something suitable, and to adopt is to make something one's own. In this case, the field of journalism is making gradual changes in order to adjust to technological advances, so adapt makes sense. Choices C and D are therefore incorrect. The paragraph is in the present tense, so is adapting works, that's A, and was adapting, B, does not. Questions 23 through 33 are based on the following passage. Here's number 23. Which choice would most specifically describe how long ago the Parthenon was constructed? It's B, more than 2,500 years ago. Giving an approximation of the years is the most precise option. Choices A, C, and D are too vague. 24 is A, no change. This choice gives necessary breaks between all of the listed items and also has a break after the clarifying phrase most recently. Choices B, C, and D all change the original meaning because of their comma placements or lack thereof. 25. What could best be used for the underlined portion to convey the high priority the Greeks placed on completing the Parthenon in a glorious fashion? 25 is B, sparing no expense. To convey giving a high priority to making the Parthenon glorious, the phrase sparing no expense is the best choice. It indicates that the Greeks were willing to put as many economic resources as needed into finishing the Parthenon in a beautiful manner. Honesty and judiciousness, choice A, do not necessarily relate to making the Parthenon glorious. Although artistic patience and the use of architectural techniques, choices C and D, could be loosely related to completing the Parthenon in the glorious fashion. Those do not convey that finishing it was a high priority. 26. The answer is A, no change. This is the only option that expresses the needed contrast between the previous sentence and the current one, since there is a contrast between the glorious construction of the Parthenon and the fact that the glory was very short-lived. The other options do not express the needed contrast. Number 27 is C, could have. It's C because could've, that's could, apostrophe, V-E, could've, sounds like could of, but it is short for could have. The use of the word of in this context is therefore completely incorrect, making choices A and B wrong. Choice C correctly expresses the verb have. D makes the sentence say, should have been still served, which is nonsensical. "28 is D, the word its. For 28, its, D, correctly refers to the singular Parthenon's possession of pagan gods. The word its with a parenthesis after is incorrect. That's choice A. And both choice B and choice C mean it is. 29 is D, remnants. Remnants means surviving pieces or traces of something. So logically, these refer to the parts of the Parthenon that remained after its destruction. A refers to the study of such remains, not the remains themselves. Choices B and C do not give a precise description of what these are. 30 is D. The answer is today with a comma after today. This choice concisely expresses the intended idea. Choices A and B are too wordy. C likely wants to say something along the lines of contemporary, but the word given actually means with contempt. 31 is B, R-A-R-E. Beauty and refinement create a compound subject. That requires the plural word are. In addition, the paragraph is in the present tense, so the verb must be in the present tense. Choices C and D are in the past tense, and choice A is singular. 32 is C, that have outlawed. The fact that these engravings have lasted for a long time is an essential part of their description. So that is needed instead of which. Now choice C also uses the proper tense. A uses the incorrect verb tense. For B and D, they use which works for nonsensical characteristics of described objects. 33, which of the following would be the most effective conclusion to the essay? 33, the answer is A, no change. The essay focuses throughout on the impressive feat of the Parthenon's construction, so choice A gives a direct connection to this general theme. Choices B and C are too vague, and choice D focuses on only a small part of the passage. Questions 34 through 44 are based on the following passage. Here's 34. Which choice would best function as the introductory thesis of this essay? C. The disappearance of the Neanderthals is one of the great mysteries in the evolutionary success of modern humans. By examining the topic sentence of the paragraphs, you can see that the essay is presenting various theories about what happened to the Neanderthals. Choice C is therefore the most fitting option to introduce the essay's argument. Choice A is vague and B is disconnected from the essay's argument. Now D contradicts the essay's argument since the Neanderthals were not ultimately successful in adapting. 35 is B. The evolutionarily distinct species Homo neanderthalensis had spread to the icebound north of modern Eurasia. For 35, mention of the Neanderthals, the beginning of the underlined portion, is necessary to make a logical comparison with our own ancestors. Choices A and D make illogical comparisons since they compare geographic regions to ancestors. C has confusing word order at the end, placing icebound such that it literally means that the Neanderthals were icebound. Now B puts things in logical order and makes a logical comparison of people to Neanderthals. 37 is A, no change. The last part of this sentence gives more support to the claim in the first part of the sentence, making and appropriate. Choice B shows contrast, choice C is too wordy, and D removes a needed transition. Here's number 38. The writer would like to insert this sentence to provide further support to his argument in this paragraph. Further, there is strong evidence to suggest that later Neanderthals were capable of creating sophisticated and versatile garments from animal pellets designed to maintain core warmth without inducing perspiration. Where would it best be placed? D, after sentence 3. This sentence is best placed at the end of the paragraph since it has the initial transition of the word further, which indicates that it is building on the previous argument. Moreover, it is logical to have this after sentence 3 since this sentence gives information in support of the idea that Neanderthals had excellent body heat generating ability. The clothing cited in the sentence builds on this genetic advantage. Choice A makes no sense because this sentence cannot function as an introduction. B interrupts a logical transition between sentences 1 and 2, and C inverts the logical sequence of the inserted sentence building upon sentence 3. 39. Which choice is the most consistent elaboration on the first sentence of this paragraph? Use B. That's the answer, B, interbreeding. The first sentence of the paragraph states, absorption may have been the cause of Neanderthal extinction. Therefore, interbreeding most logically expresses how this absorption could have taken place. Choice A would have resulted in Neanderthal extermination. Choices C and D do not give the strong explanation that interbreeding would. Here's number 40. Which wording best conveys that the Neanderthals only have a slight genetic divergence from present-day humans? It's A. No change, contemporary is the only option that clarifies that these are present-day humans to whom the Neanderthals are compared. 41. It's D. Our African ancestors experienced a drastic genetic bottleneck. This choice concisely expresses the idea using logical word order. Choices A and B use passive voice. Choice C jumbles up the word order such that the meaning is very confused. Number 42 is D. The answer is the Neanderthals were. Without clarification of the pronoun, it could be referring to Homo neanderthalensis or to Homo sapiens. Therefore, choices A and B are too vague. This took place in the past, so D is right. The present tense in choice C is wrong. 43 is B, margins. Here's why. Margins is the most logical wording since Neanderthals would have been pushed to the outer reaches of these geographic areas. A does not make sense since there are not oceans in Europe and Asia. Choices C and D do not make sense since human-like species could not live on debris or remains. For 44, the answer is C, to the very edge of the land, nearly back into Africa itself, where our common ancestors. 44 is C because this choice correctly places the clarifying phrase, nearly back into Africa itself, out of the way, using commas. A breaks up the phrase, ancestors first emerge. Choice B breaks up the phrase, edge of the land, and choice D breaks up the phrase, nearly back to Africa.